Hey guys, I was telling you I was going to show you what my plans were for sanding down the deck. Well, I've got this old scrubber. It's a floor polisher, much like the custodians at the school use, but instead of the bristles on the bottom, I took that attachment off that was attached to the bristles. I fabricated this on just 2 circles of plywood, nice and easy. One with this hole in the middle, because you can see it's actually recessed in here. But this is the attachment fixture that fastens it to the bottom of the motor of this big upright scrubber. So once I got this, I had some styrofoam laying around, cut a circle. So what I'm going to do, take some spray glue. I've already done this once already, and I did it with sandpaper that is 150 grit. Now, when you're stripping something down, 150 grit sandpaper is a bit fine. So it either takes a long time or it's not going to do the job at all, because the sandpaper will clog up. And we'll talk a little bit very shortly about the difference in grits for sandpaper, because it's really important. So anyway, this is for resurfacing anything. If you're resurfacing a piece of furniture, you're going to want with a heavier grit. So what I did was I went out and I had some 80 grit. Now 80 grit's pretty good. 60 and 40, you're basically talking about small pebbles glued to pieces of paper, and it gets really aggressive. And I don't want to be too aggressive taking off the top layer of this deck. So 80 grit, I think will be just fine. Anyway, so I spray a little bit of spray glue on here. Now it's not permanent glue, because I know that the styrofoam is going to wear down, like when I hit the posts of the deck here. I'll spray both surfaces. Let it get a little bit tacky. Now the reason I'm putting the styrofoam on the bottom of this plywood is to give it a soft kind of surface. That's the backer for the, there goes my puppy. It's the soft backer for where the sandpaper is going to be attached. If I were to show you the video, which I didn't take, if I showed you the video of what it was like when I tried the sandpaper glued right to the plywood, that was pretty aggressive. Slamming all over the place, and it was only getting the high spots. But because the backing of the sandpaper is now going to be styrofoam, it's got a little bit of flex to it. So it may get a little bit more of the nooks and crannies, and it's a little softer on the deck too. It's got quite a lot of forgiveness. Anyway, then the styrofoam is going to stay on there, but now I'm going to stick the sandpaper to the top of the styrofoam. And when the styrofoam will last a lot longer than the sandpaper. So we'll just peel the sandpaper off, throw it away, because she gets chewed up pretty good. And there we go. Now this is recycled sandpaper I got from that factory where I get all my good stuff. So I've got lots of it, and I'll keep replacing it. Now, when it comes to sandpaper, what we were talking about with the different grits. Some of you may be new to sandpaper. Like I said, the 150 grit sandpaper and the 80 grit sandpaper, one of them is more coarse than the other. And the numbers on the back of the sandpaper refer to something very specific. And it's a number that woodworkers and well, resurfacers, I suppose you could call them, they get very comfortable with what each of those numbers means. But knowing what they mean in the beginning is very important. The 150 and the 80, and I mean, it goes as low as I've seen 40, but I've also seen up to like 4,000. It's some high polishing sandpaper. What that means is, in the manufacturing process, this is the sandpaper that we know it, but the manufacturing process of sandpaper, there is a square inch that is, actually, let's not look at it like that. There's a designated amount of area in the die that is, and when I say die, it's a part of a mechanism that they use to make the sandpaper. It's like a strainer where it's got a bunch of holes in it. And then they have sand in the top of this strainer, and when they shake it, sand falls through. But the way they designate the different sandpapers is the size of the holes in those shaker mechanisms. So they'll put sand in the top of this hopper, this tray, and as it shakes and drops sand onto a glued piece of paper, making your sandpaper, only certain size sand will fall through these holes in that die. And in a very small area, that's a standard area, I believe it's a square inch, there are so many holes. And can you guess how many holes are in 120 grit sandpaper for every square inch? 120. 80 for 80, 20 for 20, or sorry, 120 for 120, and the fine dust that must filter through that dye to make 2,000, 3,000 wet sandpaper. That would be a very dusty, dangerous place to work, because that fine of a particle is also not very good for your chest and in your lungs. Which brings me to my next point. When I'm sanding, I'm going to be making an awful lot of dust. And I did the first pass over this with 150 sandpaper, and it was outside. I thought I'd be fine. No, it scratched my throat to kingdom come. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be wearing my very favorite mask, the one I've talked to you guys about maybe, and it filters out everything down to as small a particle as asbestos, which is measured in microns. So I'm going to be good. But it'll all blow away, and it's supposed to rain tonight and tomorrow, which will wash everything down below. And it's just wood below my deck, and it'll be fine. So let me put some of this stuff aside. I will fasten this. Get this puppy upright. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this video off as I start this, because the last thing I want to do is have this video, which has gone so well so far, be completely shot by me getting thrown away by this very powerful machine. So I'm going to have it start, get a feel for it, because it's a pretty strong motor on this thing, and I don't want to be embarrassed. So I'll see you at the next video.